mainstream media are picking up right-wing media talking points, so let me correct you a little bit. Yeah, there are 2.4 million FOID card holders in the state of Illinois. 2.4 million people do not have assault weapons. So when you talk about the percentage of people who are filing and registering, it's a much higher percentage than what you've cited of
Governor J.B. Pritzker last month reacting to the low number of individuals who are registering their firearms. And if you take a look at the Illinois State Police statistics, updated, at least when I saw on Friday, and it went from 0.2% of the 2.4 million FOID card holders to 0.25% of FOID card holders. So that's where we're at right now when it comes to the registration. And we've got just under 3 weeks here before January 1st deadline kicks in for people to register with state police banned firearms. A lot of back and forth on this. We'll hear more of what Governor J.B. Pritzker had to say last month. Also, you've got State Representative Bob Morgan as well, sounding off on the number of people who have registered firearms. But I did talk with Todd Vandermyde from Freedom Steel on Friday, and we delved into the rules, and in particular how much those rules have changed just in the span of a few months here, from September 15th when the initial emergency rules were filed to now, where you've got the rules that are on second notice and the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules meeting tomorrow. Also tomorrow, while JCAR's meeting in the morning, you've got the Southern District of Illinois that's going to be hearing the case challenging the gun ban registry. So that's coming up as well tomorrow. Again, a big week when it comes to this issue of Illinois' gun ban and registry. But Todd Vandermyde talking about the rules that are on second notice and how much those rules have changed just in a handful of weeks.
Wow. They've made some substantial changes here. And I think that one of the things I've noticed is they still do not address common parts in a comprehensive way. You can sell, they talked about that if a gun like the Ruger Precision is sold with an AR-15 style pistol grip, that as sold like that, it's okay, even though, it's a bolt action gun, but it's coming as a complete package. But then they go on and say that if you take that grip off, it has to be registered. But they don't seem to address the fact that, okay, maybe I'm changing the grip out. I want one with a different angle on it, whatever that is. But now the registration is supposed to close January 1st. How do you register something like that? I mean, they don't make any allowances for that. Their administration of the program isn't very good. They don't really say how residents who move into the state are supposed to register something. They make up that if you're a exempt party, a security guard, a law enforcement officer, and let's say you either leave the law enforcement field or you retire, they say those individuals can register the firearms that they obtained under their exemption, but they don't put any parameters around that. So those are just a couple of parts that are screwy, and they're just not thought out. They've given some comment to feeding devices, but they contradict themselves. In one part, they say that for shotguns, you use the largest size shell that it's chambered for, but then in their FAQs and things, they say that if it's an AR mag and it'll hold 10 rounds of 458 SOCOM or 30 rounds of 5.56, you go with the 30 round capacity. So I don't know what they're thinking here.
Again, Todd Vandermyde, when I chatted with him on Friday, we also talked about the vagueness and how he says that there's still unanswered questions and a lot of things that just really are not clear in those rules.
The law used some very vague terms, and I think that they're within their scope to sit there and define some of those. So they have taken licensed firing ranges to mean those ranges that would fall under the civil immunities prospects of the liability standards. There is a definition there. We've been operating under that definition for over 20 years. So it would seem that, okay, that's legitimate. They did receive a bunch of questions about gun clubs and FFLs and what they're supposed to do. And they've gone back and forth on that. Now they're telling us that gun clubs don't have to register their particular inventories that they may have that may fall under this, because it's not uncommon for gun clubs that the president signs for things, but they're not the true owner of it. But Illinois has provisions in law that really allow corporations to own guns. Somebody has to sign for it at the store. Someone has to do the 4473 and the like. So those are some changes in there. I think that's going to clear a few things up, but there's still a lot that's fairly vague on this.
You've got Vandermyde, again, touching on the vagueness issues and also on the public comments that were provided, because Illinois State Police did do, 3 different hearings that were prescribed by the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. And those hearings, we reviewed those in some detail with a lot of people interested in all of that. But it wasn't just the hearings where public comments were provided. There were also public comments provided in writing. I was able to get my hands on some of this documentation showing a bunch of questions from citizens asking details and technical questions and making comments about how they feel that this law is tyrannical and how they don't see how this can be even slightly constitutional. So you've got the public comments that have been coming in by email or by mail, and you had some from organizations out of Chicago focused on children's health, saying that this is good and limiting the access to firearms is going to lower the number of mass shootings. Proponents of the measure said, but there were also proponents that apparently used some kind of automated mailing system of sorts that was flagged by some internal to state police mechanics that it was considered spam. So Vandermyde talking about just the myriad public comments that were made.
Yeah, it sounds like they had about 240 postcard style comments. It's fine just the way it is. Well, that just shows you how much they don't know about firearms.
So Vandermyde also talking about JCAR, Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. They are set to meet on Tuesday morning, where they will take up these second notice rules. I asked Todd what he thinks that JCAR should do.
I think that it would be nice if they turn the rule back. They're not going to do that. It would be nice to see them file an objection saying, you guys fell way short of this. I think the problem is that they are sitting there with a looming deadline, having procrastinated, and now they get, the members of JCAR want something on the books so that in these last 2 weeks or so of the requirement to register a firearm, that the public has some notice. I think the notice has been woefully inadequate. I mean, now you're talking about, a 35-page document that people are supposed to comprehend to understand what they're supposed to do. And you're going to get 2 weeks to read it, digest it, and figure out how it applies to you. They've mishandled this thing all the way through. It would have been nice had they been more proactive on this, but I think JCAR is going to let the rule go into the final form, go into effect, and just so that they can say they've got something on the books.
So again, Todd Vandermyde with Freedom Steel on YouTube, a gun rights advocate and somebody who's been in the trenches in committee hearings talking about this issue for years when it comes to gun regulation. But again, I want to highlight the number of registrations that we've seen so far. According to Illinois State Police statistics, you've got of the 2.4 million FOID card holders, 6,141 individuals have disclosed, a total of 12,000 firearms, 6,200 accessories, and 117 ammunition disclosures for a total of around 18,500 total disclosures. When Governor J.B. Pritzker was asked about this last month of the number of those disclosing, he tended to kind of brush aside what some characterize as a low turnout.
Mainstream media are picking up right-wing media talking points, so let me correct you a little bit. Yeah, there are 2.4 million FOID card holders in the state of Illinois. 2.4 million people do not have assault weapons. So when you talk about the percentage of people who are filing and registering, it's a much higher percentage than what you've cited of the people who are required to do so. I can tell you, at least for me, that I think all of us take our time sometimes when we know the deadline is 2.5 months hence, that we'll find the time eventually to go online, which is what they need to do, and to register as they're required to do. So we expect there to be more and more people as we get closer to the deadline, which is the end of the year, to do so. And people who don't, obviously, at some point, they will be breaking the law. They're not that common, and I should probably ask Representative Morgan, who drafted the bill, and Senator Morrison, who was very instrumental in it, to talk about this. But I will say that the target here is keeping people safe. You should be able and free to go to a parade and not get shot at, and not have 83 bullets fired in 60 seconds or less. And that's all we're asking. We're not taking guns away from people. We're not limiting your freedom. We're simply recognizing that we want people to be safe, and don't think that it's a weapon that keeps you safe to have something that fires that many bullets in that short a period of time.
So again, Governor J.B. Pritzker reacting to the numbers, but he wasn't the only one. State Representative Bob Morgan, who pushed this as well, he provided some reaction to the numbers and kind of reiterating what the governor had to say last month.
Illinois, as you noted, historically we've registered people with our FOID card registration. This is the first time we're registering weapons themselves. I also think there are a lot of individuals who have these weapons are considering whether to sell them to someone out of state, which is a provision in the law that they're allowed to do. So I do think this is a function of cramming for the test, that people will wait till the last minute. They'll see, there's obviously, we're still waiting for a ruling from the Federal Court of Appeals. Some people are waiting for that, but I also expect that number to increase as people recognize that they want to be law-abiding citizens, and they want to be consistent with state law, and they will register their existing legacy weapons. Otherwise, they're risking their FOID card. And I think the vast majority of people are just committed to being law-abiding citizens the way they are now.
Well, and it's interesting, he notes only the appeals court, but that's not the only place that this is. You've got two cases in front of the U.S. Supreme Court that are very much still pending. And one in particular, the Naperville case, you could possibly see a motion for a preliminary injunction issued by the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett before that January 1st deadline. You've also got the Southern District of Illinois with a case that could possibly lead to a preliminary injunction on this. So with JCAR meeting tomorrow, last month they had a meeting, and State Senator Bill Cunningham, who's the co-chair of JCAR, he's a Democrat out of Chicago, he was asked whether or not this is going to be suspended because of all the uncertainty there is.
I will say that the state police have done a good job of reaching out for public input. That's what we've asked them to do. They held 3 community hearings to take input. That's not something they had to do, but we requested they do that. They have. And I think they have a very difficult job in front of them right now, and I think they're doing it well.
So Cunningham also asked about just the ongoing confusion there was from the public hearings. Doesn't seem that answers were really provided in detail. What about delaying?
This is something we get into with JCAR a lot. The law is the law. There is no changing the law in the rulemaking process. Obviously, there are important details that are added on, but there are individuals that just simply disagree with this law that it is in place. So I don't know that they're ever going to be pleased with the final product. But we have to make sure that the state police follows the proper rulemaking procedures. They have done that so far, and I anticipate if they continue to do that, then a rule will go forward.
So another question that was asked of Cunningham is, this is a pretty technical issue, and there's still some real technical questions that some people haven't had clearly answered. And Cunningham recognizes that in the law that was passed, state police have the ability to change on a yearly basis, not just what firearms are to be registered, but what attachments are to be registered. So all of this is going to have to possibly change again if the law stands legal scrutiny in the courts.
No, I think it makes it difficult, but the existing statute does contemplate the state police dealing with this problem and allows them to amend rules on an ongoing basis. They have that authority in the statute. So I think that problem was anticipated, and that's how the law intends to deal with that problem.
So, again, state police every October 1st can change the rules, so to speak, not just the list of guns. Cunningham also asked about his confidence because of the legal challenges that remain in this. And I did see a question here. I'm not completely neglecting all of the questions in the live comments here, but somebody had asked about whether or not, the Second Amendment reigns supreme. And then is this an issue? It says, hey, Bishop, I have a question. If the Second Amendment's king, then isn't Illinois' Constitution, Section 22, saying subject only to police powers? Isn't that unconstitutional in itself, making PICA null? Well, again, that's up to the courts. And even Senator Cunningham, a Democrat from Chicago, the co-chair of JCAR, he indicates that, until a court final ruling is that it's unconstitutional, the law is a law.
I wouldn't want to speculate. We have a saying that every law is constitutional until a court tells you it's not. So the state police has to go along with the rulemaking as contemplated by the law.
So again, the law is the law until a court tells us otherwise, he says.
I think, as I said, we have to assume that the law is constitutional until a court tells us it's not.
So Todd Vandermyde, back to what he had to say. I asked him, what kind of advice, if he can give any at all, what should people do here in this situation?
I'm not going to give the masses advice, but what I do tell people when I'm asked is everybody has to make their own decision. You have to, look at what your situation is and what is your risk tolerance. It's a Class A misdemeanor for a first offense. It is a Class 4 or 3 felony for a second offense, which requires a conviction on the first part. We've had 90 sheriffs saying they're not going to enforce this. I would assume that if the sheriffs aren't going to charge it, there's probably a fair number of prosecutors that aren't going to chase it down on their own to boot. So with that, people have to make their, I have to be one of those guys that once the government gets their hands on data, it never goes away, that the internet is forever. I understand why some people who would have NFA items that they had to register with the ATF might be inclined to register those guns because they're already on that list. But people are going to have to make up their own decisions as their risk tolerance and what they think to do. I've made up my mind what I'm going to do.
Well, and I asked Todd if he was willing to disclose what he plans on doing. What's he going to do about the registry?
I'm not registering my lightsaber, I'll tell you that much. I'm going to be a good rebel. I'm not registering my lightsaber.
So there you go. Again, it's another big day here, big week for the issue of litigation against Illinois' gun and magazine ban, and we'll be tracking it all tomorrow morning. You've got JCAR that's going to be coming into session at 11 o'clock. But what's fascinating there is sometimes that takes some time. So if you're going to be watching that live, and it will be available on a live stream so people can track along, expected that they will be asking state police to update on some of the things they heard and some of the changes of the rules. Whether or not they're going to vote to suspend the rules, that's still up in the air. Whether or not they're going to object to the rules, it's still up in the air. But don't expect it to start right at 11 o'clock. So if you're going to start watching at 11 o'clock, you might just see an empty room while they then start to pour in 30 to 45 minutes later. I asked Cunningham last month why that is, why they have an 11 o'clock start date. But it seems that there's this closed-door pre-meeting that happens before they actually get down to business.
So during that period, members of the committee get to ask their JCAR staff about the progress that's been made on rulemaking, which what often happens is the JCAR staff, the nonpartisan staff of JCAR, meets with stakeholders when there are objections and concerns over rules, and they brief members of JCAR on how those meetings have gone prior to the hearing. And I think you heard several questions and comments that came out of those meetings during the hearing today.
So again, the JCAR meeting set for 11 tomorrow. It's not sure when they're actually going to be out in front of the cameras asking the questions of not just state police, but a whole host of other state agencies with rules in place. So JCAR in the morning. And then in the afternoon, you've got the Southern District of Illinois with the court hearing. That's going to happen with federal firearms licensees of Illinois and a whole bunch of other plaintiffs seeking to delay that January 1st deadline. And Southern District of Illinois Judge Stephen McGlynn already saying he plans to issue a ruling in that challenge to hold that January 1st deadline while the case proceeds. He says he will make a ruling on that question before the Christmas holiday. That while you've also got the U.S. Supreme Court tackling the case with Justice Amy Coney Barrett having gotten the filing from the Naperville case, the response from the state, and a response to the state's response from the Naperville plaintiffs. So a lot of things happening. Stay tuned. More Bishop on Air coming up. Be sure to follow along. Bishop on Air on X, on Facebook, on YouTube. You can watch live alongside all that and catch clips here on YouTube. And don't forget to support the show by clicking that notification bell and also finding some merchandise you want to check out. So make it happen, all right? It's Bishop on Air.